show. I'm Mike Missinelli. That's Derek Gunn and Seth Joyner. Joining us soon will be John McMullen, who covered the game for the JAKIB Media. Let me ask you this, Seth. Like, after a game like this, describe the locker room.
Oh, it's just euphoric. You kidding me? It is absolutely euphoric because, you know, your whole season is flashing before your eyes in the realization that, you know, the ultimate goal, you've met it, you know. So you're trying to, you know, it's the one time where you'll let your guard down because you know you got a 2-week window in between, you know, and it's just 100% euphoric in there. Each guy, you know, always communicating with each other in a situation like this and congratulating each other on such a great year. But the thought is, and the conversation is too, hey, we ain't done yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's joyous, but at the same time, you know, the 2 times that I went to the Super Bowl, I didn't come anywhere near that NFC, AFC championship, you know, trophy. I didn't even want to touch it. That's not the one I wanted.
Sounds like a hockey player. All right, the man that covered the game today has been covering them all season long, joining us on the Eagles Pile Hockey post-game show. Mr. John McMullen joins us. John, you know, the realization is here. This team that we looked at all year as how good are they? They were good. Were they the best in the NFC? They're the best in the NFC. They're going to the Super Bowl. Just put that in perspective for us.
Yeah, they are going to the Super Bowl, and obviously this is a team that has dominated the NFC. If you think about what the starting quarterback and Jalen Hurts, 16-1, so you know that's pretty good, and that's where the Eagles have been. So it's no surprise they're here, Mike. It's a little bit of a surprise how easy it was, but that was directly related to the Eagles, specifically Hassan Reddick. I think it was the 6th offensive play of the game where he had the big strip sack. It looked like it was an incomplete pass. That was what it was called on the field. Overruled, got the football out before Brock Purdy. So that double positive, as Nick Sirianni likes to call it, was a huge plus in the game, but not nearly as much as the fact that the quarterback had the lead. And, you know, when he did come back, he couldn't throw the football. So it was evident to the Eagles, and it became very easy. So it's very rare you say this, but I'm going to say this. I knew a lot about this team before the game. I didn't learn anything about this team during the game because they blitzed it. And it was not a game from the point Brock Purdy left with that injury.
Hey, John, I had said it a short while ago, when you talk about the sums that make up the whole on this team, you know, outside of the 44 rushing attempts against this 49ers defense, you look at the individual stats, and there's nobody who jumps out as a wow factor. We're so used to seeing 1 or 2 players 100 yards, 150 rushing yards. But your leading rusher at 48, your leading pass catcher at 33, and yet they put up 31 points on the board. You know, that is about as complete of a team as you can possibly find.
Yeah, and I think, you know, once the game, all games have personalities. That's something that Jim told me back in the day that always stuck with me, and he's 100% right. And from the standpoint of this game's personality, look, there was a little bit of a thought, okay, what's going on here when Christian McCaffrey had that great 23-yard run, and, you know, maybe San Francisco could make this a game. And the Eagles responded with the help of San Francisco. I think it was a 14-play drive. They went right down the field. San Francisco had 3 defensive penalties on that drive. So not only were they up against it from a quarterback and personnel standpoint, they were also shooting themselves in the foot. And then it was 14-7. And then San Francisco gets the ball back. Josh Johnson, who, by the way, I looked it up, guys. 15 years, 23 roster moves. He's played on every team in every league ever. So, I mean, and he was back on San Francisco December 4th. He dropped, that was a pretty good snap from my perspective. He just dropped it. Hassan Reddick, it was Hassan Reddick's night. Gets on it, fumble recovery, then it's 21-7. I mean, there was no chance this team had. They were warming up Christian McCaffrey to play a quarterback. once Josh Johnson got concussed. That's what they were down to. And the Eagles quickly figured that out in the second half. All they're going to do is run the ball. They literally can't throw the football. When Purdy had to come back in, he threw 2 little tiny screen passes. Just could not throw the football down the field because of the injury. And you're just trying to get out. You're trying to run the ball, run the clock. And San Francisco is helping you from that perspective because they can't do anything else. And it became just, sort of a long celebration for the trip to Glendale.
John, last week, it was presumed that Nick Sirianni created some bulletin board information and got Hassan Reddick turned up. You could tell by his comments after the game. This week, he's not even a finalist for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's going against the guy that's the presumable, apparent winner of Defensive Player of the Year in Nick Bosa. How much motivation you think he gleaned from that coming into this game to show everybody that he was at least deserving to be on the final 3 list?
Yeah, Hassan talks about it all the time. He's been fighting for that recognition for a number of years, and he got a lot of it this year. The fact that he was a Pro Bowl player for the first time, the fact that he got second-team All-Pro recognition for the first time. So a lot of it is coming, but he's still got that chip on his shoulder, yeah. And he's had – as I said, and I asked Nick this in the press, he wrecked the game. He wrecked the game today. So we all talk about, and Seth, you know this better than anybody. You talk about game wreckers on defense. That's exactly what Hassan Reddick was today. And Nick Bosa was on the other side, and he did not. You got to give Lane Johnson a lot of credit, playing through his injury. Nick Bosa had one really good play on his own read. He almost got Jalen Hurts for a safety, but he didn't do much. Whereas Hassan Reddick has 2 sacks, the forced fumble. He knocked the quarterback out of the game. He had the fumble recovery. He feels a little disrespect. I'm sure Nick Sirianni feels a little disrespect. He's not a finalist for Coach of the Year. Kyle Shanahan was. And, look, it's difficult to play with your 3rd-string quarterback, never mind your 4th-string quarterback. So in a lot of ways, it was amazing San Francisco made it this far, but that doesn't change the fact that they had so many sort of mental mistakes. There were 3 delay of game penalties because the coach couldn't get the play call in quick enough to quarterbacks who aren't prepared, maybe like veterans are. And then you have all the defensive penalties, the undisciplined nature. You have D'Amico Ryans, who we all love in this town. He's probably going to get the Houston job over Jonathan Gannon. Well, who performed better today, Jonathan Gannon or D'Amico Ryans? So I think a lot of people on this team and coaching staff, and I talk about it all the time, they're usually not underdogs, but they have that underdog mentality. That seems, when we talk about it's a Philly thing, and that was the marketing slogan the Eagles go with, that's part of it. They always think they're an underdog, even when they're not an underdog.
John, you alluded to the drive that put them in the lead of 14-7. And you're right, the 3 penalties really hurt the 49ers there. But we were kicking this notion around. They had to convert a 4th down from their own 34 in that drive. And I'm curious, when that happened, you're watching the game live, what was your feeling about that?
My feeling was I watched Nick enough to knew he was going to go for it. And I think that's an advantage that the Eagles have over other teams. Most teams are going to default, we're a couple inches short, but we're at the 34. We're going to punt the football, and the Eagles don't do that. And I think it's a huge advantage. Now, part of it is because of the quarterback and the so-called tush push, and ultimately I think the NFL is going to change that rule, to be honest, because of the success the Eagles have had with it. But right now it's legal, and they use it. And if they're 4th and inches on their side of the field, they're very comfortable knowing they're going to get that 1st down, so they're not going to punt the football.
Hey, John, I'm assuming you were at the podium with Nick Sirianni. What was the mindset behind running the football 44 times in this game today? They were even running it with efficiency early on in the game when it was a close ball game, and obviously when they got on the lead, they sat on that lead. Did he talk about the mindset behind trying to run the football with the consistency that they were able to do in this game?
Well, I think most of it had to do with what I said before about, all games have personalities. And as I said, when it became clear that San Francisco was very limited offensively, you go through the entire second half. It's just, all right, we're going to run the ball. We're going to get out of here and get to the Super Bowl. So I think part of that is just, where you are in the game. I always say, when people talk about run-pass ratio, I always say, well, tell me what the score is in the fourth quarter. If you're down 2 touchdowns, it's not going to look good. If you're up 2 touchdowns, it's going to look good for what you want. So that was what this was about. I don't think they actually struggled running the football early.
Right.
When San Francisco was in the game, and Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw they're the best linebacker tandem in football. Fred Warner's a really good player. But, Drake Greenlaw made some mental mistakes. And the 49ers were just frustrated. And they were frustrated because the offense was so limited. And the offense was so limited because the quarterback was out after the 6th play of the game.
John, the one thing about the running game that I'm really impressed with is how quickly Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni pivoted in the first half. They started off the first series. They went 11 plays, 66 yards, and capped it off with a Miles Sanders 5-yard rushing touchdown. Then they went 3 plays punt, 4 plays punt, 3 plays punt. And then they got back to running the ball again in that fifth possession. Although they got some help on that drive, 14 plays, 75 yards, 3 San Francisco penalties that extended the drive, ended with another Sanders 13-yard touchdown. But they ran the ball pretty darn effective in the first half. 9 passes. Hurts was 13 of 19 for 97 yards. But rushing as a team, they ran it 18 times for 69 yards. It was really balanced up in the first half. And they only averaged, like 3.4 yards a carry. Normally, under those circumstances, they'll abandon the run and go strictly pass, but they stuck with it today, and that was one of my keys in pregame was, can they remain committed to running the ball even when you're not making yards in huge chunks? And they found a way to do it today because, a couple of weeks ago, we were all screaming from the rooftop, why don't they run the ball? Why don't they run the ball? They were just throwing it.
Yeah, I don't want to give them too much credit, Seth, because when it was 7-7, look, they had the long drive, and that was a good drive, but they were helped out by the 3 defensive penalties, as we mentioned. And then all of a sudden, the 49ers get the ball back. It's late in the first half. They probably should have just kneeled down or just ran it a couple times and got into halftime because they were getting the ball in the second half. And Josh Johnson was in the game at the time. And he had, I think, on the first down, he had a nice completion. It was probably his best throw of the game. And then he dropped the shotgun snap. It wasn't a forced turnover. It was he dropped it, and I think it was Hassan who got on top of the football. So it was sort of an unforced error. So then they have the short field. The Eagles get the ball at the 30-yard line. And even then, Boston Scott, if you remember, he was going to be stopped for about a 4 or 5-yard loss. And Drake Greenlaw grabbed a space mask. And all of a sudden, the drive's over. Jake Elliott's going to kick a field goal. So you already harmed yourself from San Francisco's standpoint. But, again, they made the big mistake. All of a sudden, it turns into a first down. And then the Eagles score, and the game's pretty much out of reach. So I don't want to give them that much credit, and that's why I said I look at this game, and because of the way it unfolded, I want to give them credit. I'll tell you where I want to give them credit. They were physical. And you never want to see somebody get hurt, but that was a clean play by Hassan Reddick. They were physical. When Ndamukong Suh knocked Josh Johnson out of the game, it was a clean play. They were physical, and they out-physicaled what was supposed to be a very physical team in San Francisco. And you saw that frustration from the 49ers when they started getting chippy late in the game when it was over. They knew they got their you-know-what's kicked from a physical standpoint.
All right, so, John, we got a Super Bowl here. And here's the thing. No matter what team they play, that team's probably going to be a little more experienced in this kind of situation. I don't know how these 2 weeks are going to go. I hope the Eagles don't, get carried away with the adulation they're going to get. But when we look at this possible Super Bowl matchup, who do you think they match up better with to win the Super Bowl, the Chiefs or the Bengals?
I think a little bit with the Bengals because Cincinnati has so many issues on their offensive line, down 3 offensive linemen, so they're really scraping it together. And obviously the Eagles with their front, and we talked about Hassan Reddick so much in the 70 sacks. In Kansas City, they have Patrick Mahomes, number 1. I don't know, you guys might be watching it a little bit more closely. I haven't gotten to see any of it, but I don't know how healthy he is. We know their defense, and Steve Spagnuolo's going to blitz, and, they generate some sacks, but they come up with some big plays as well. So from that standpoint, I think just because of Cincinnati's offensive line, I think Kansas City would be a little bit tougher. But both teams are going to be tough because Joe Burrow, man. Whew, Eagles better score some points. They better get this offense right in this bye week. They're going to have to score some points out there.
Hey, John, real quick, obviously at the end of the game, when you're a team like the 49ers who are riding such a high and it just unraveled for them, they let their emotions get the best of them down the stretch. Extracurricular stuff taking place, players getting kicked out of the game, including one Eagles player as well. What do you think will happen more so for the Eagles players in terms? Do you think it'll just be fines? You don't think it could affect anybody's availability for that Super Bowl?
No. Mainly just a fine. I mean, poor Kayvon Wallace, he just got thrown by Trent Williams anyway. So I think it was, he might get a fine, but nothing more than that. And, I think everybody will be ready for the Super Bowl. From San Francisco's standpoint, really disappointing. Kind of amazing they were even here, to be honest. 12 straight, winning with Brock Purdy. But once Josh Johnson was in the game, I mean, there's not much you can do at that point.
John, listen, thanks so much. We'll see what happens in the we have 2 weeks to marinate now. So I know this city is going to be berserk, and these players are really going to get hugs for the next at least a week. So we'll see how it works out. Are you feeling right now that the Eagles win the Super Bowl? Oh, he's gone. Okay.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
You guys got me.
So do your instincts say that they'll win the Super Bowl?
My instincts say they are going to win the Super Bowl for this. They're 16-1 with Jalen Hurts when he's on the field. I mean, that to me says it all. They find ways to win. They find different ways to win. I think they're the deeper team. They're the more well-rounded team. I think it's their year.
All right, that's good enough for us. John, thank you so much. We appreciate it. That is John McMullen for JAKIB Media, and we at least have one more week with my man John McMullen here. So